And we're coming to you live once again. This is the Stream-Flo of Consciousness podcast, coming to you live from the floor of the World Geothermal Congress here in Calgary, Alberta. And today we're pleased to have with us as our guest, Lisa Mueller, President and CEO of FutEra Energy Corporation. And we're going to talk a little bit today about what you do and how you do it and why it makes a difference. So I did a little bit of homework, Lisa, and I think what struck me the most about your endeavor is that it's uniquely Albertan, perhaps uniquely Canadian, in that you're taking something existing and making something new out of it without disrupting too many things. But I'll let you explain what that means. What do you guys do?
Good morning, Marcus. Thanks for having me.
Sure.
What do we do? Well, you have to also put a lens behind it. Not only am I like a newly found Albertan, but I'm also a Saskatchewan farm girl.
Perfect.
So we're pretty practical in our approach to anything.
Yeah.
So our view of geothermal is quite unique. And as you said, we've done something that I think is explicitly something that Alberta should have done. So we have built the first co-production geothermal facility in Canada, sending power to the grid since 2023. Really proud of that. But what makes us unique is I was at the time a vice president of a junior oil and gas company. So we built our facility in situ in an oil and gas asset. So what we did was took a enhanced oil recovery asset and added geothermal power. And there were a number of reasons why I did it that way. I was vice president of new ventures for an oil and gas company, and we had a very high utility bill. So this was a physical hedge on that.
Yeah.
B, this asset has been a water flood since the 60s. And when I went out to look at the asset before they hired me, I put my hand on a pipe and I said, wow, good news and bad news, boys. The good news is I can make geothermal power here. The bad news is you're actually running a geothermal facility, not an oil and gas facility.
Interesting.
Yeah, because it's a 1 to 2% oil cut and the rest is hot water.
Yeah.
And so what I had already surmised is I could cut the upfront costs of geothermal significantly because the heat was at surface.
Just by using existing heat.
Using existing heat, 84 producing wells, 14 injection wells, over 200 kilometers of pipeline already sitting there waiting for me to just come on and figure out how to get that heat and make it a productive power asset rather than just an oil and gas asset.
And you don't have to add, basically, you don't have to add anything else to the, I suppose.
We did.
Yeah.
And you got to remember, I wrote the white paper on this in 2018, and we got funded by the provincial government in 2019. There wasn't a lot going on in geothermal. There wasn't the current wind at the back of the geothermal industry that we're seeing.
Yeah.
So I had to compete for capital with oil and gas. So I had to be very practical about how we actually would make money.
Of course.
So I started with looking at what the grid connect right there would have. And the interesting part is in oil and gas assets, you have these existing grid connects. So you don't have to really reach too far for grid infrastructure. And I know that's one of the pinch points right now on development.
Of course.
So we had a 21 megawatt, 1 kilometer hookup to the existing transmission system on the distribution side. And we said, well, let's fill that up.
Yeah.
Because economies of scale would say your return will be better if you can fill that up.
Yeah.
Then I took a look at the 6 mile by 6 mile field and where we could get the best thermal output. And the main battery was processing, let's call it 110,000 barrels a day of 90-degree water. Well, that's not typical of a geothermal inlet temperature.
Right.
But I could upgrade that heat. So I can take all that geothermal heat, and you got to remember that's a lot of GJs of heat content, or however you want to measure it.
Yes.
But what I did was put a 15 megawatt natural gas turbine on the site right beside it, use some of the fuel gas the field was actually producing, kind of conservation kind of mindset. And then we took the waste heat off the back of that turbine and upgraded our geothermal heat to put it into a typical ORC. So we bought an ORC from Ormat, and their inlet temperature wants to be 120. So with the two combined, call it a geothermal preheat and a cogen style upgrade of the heat on the back of the turbine, I could get to off the shelf ORC technology. And now I've got a 21 megawatt nameplate facility that I can run a bunch of different ways depending on the price of power.
Sure.
So it's very nimble, and it met the thresholds, the economic thresholds, to actually not only, we built it for $50 million, but we attracted $20 million of grants, which you have to have. But we actually attracted project financing and got debt. And that's tricky.
It sure is. Well, congratulations on that. I mean, and obviously it's a model then for how you move this thing forward. You
Correct.
engineer it once and then build it
once,
several,
design once, build
several
more.
times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're the only co-production facility in North America. There's endless facilities that look like ours because oil and gas is the world over, and there are lots of enhanced oil recovery systems. So we believe that that particular technology sets us apart because we are not afraid of oil and gas. In fact, you know, depending on what you think of climate change, that's your prerogative. But I know that oil and gas exists for quite some time because it's very difficult to transition any system. And what we see is just growing demand. So it's and if you can partner with oil and gas and add decades of green energy on the back end, why wouldn't you?
Perfect solution.
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah. I'm curious because the mind then goes to, you talked about the high water cut. Are there applications for this in doing deliberate abandonment of oil wells that are no longer economically viable? Can you do that and answer the big question, which a lot of people not in our industry are interested in hearing, which is, what are you going to do with the asset that's sitting out there and needs to be abandoned?
Great cue, because that's what we're going to do next.
Oh.
So we've just announced a pilot for an advanced geothermal system, or AGS, and it's going to be called PowerFlow. But the intent is to go in where we can and take advantage of these drilled locations, typically not abandoned, only suspended. So you can't have, you know, cased and sealed it, concrete down the hole kind of thing. It's got to be sort of laid up, no longer oil and gas economic, but you can do a treatment to it where you do this closed loop system where you can produce power. So let's just say that you drilled a big horizontal well and it cost you 10, 15 million bucks to do it. Well, for the price of the liability, I can take that, do our power flow treatment system to it, and where it works and the bottom hole temperature justifies it, I can do power for 30, 40 years on the back end of it, using the value of that asset, using the value of the well pad, using the value of the road that gets to it, and the grid connect that probably is there anyway.
It sounds like a no-brainer.
There's still some technical risk, but we think we've got the solution. I know there are other people working on it, and I do welcome the fact that geothermal, which was fairly static for a couple of decades, is really getting into this, bringing oil and gas know-how to the wellhead. No pun intended here, because we're talking Stream-Flo. We're obviously going to use a Stream-Flo product because you guys are leading the world in it. But that's the point. We can use oil and gas know-how and widgets to apply to geothermal and get better in the geothermal space. And that's what ours is, a hand in glove approach. We're going to partner with oil and gas the whole way in.
Well, I mean, I heard you mention this before in a previous meeting that you and I were at. The fact of the matter is that the industry that's spending most in the next generation of energy is the oil and gas industry. That's where most of the money is coming from developing these next generation solutions. So,
and by a multiple. And so there's three things that people don't know. Number one, we graduate some of the smartest people the world over in exactly this industry, and resource production is resource production. Number two, we have one of the highest standards of regulatory and oversight of anywhere else in the world. I'll venture to guess we're top of the heap, maybe Norway beside us. So we do this in a very responsible way. And number three, anybody who is in energy, like Stream-Flo, like all the folks that we're going to talk to, wants to stay in energy. So they spend the money to be current on what developments are happening. And I would argue even further, they're pushing the envelope to stay in the game. An energy company today is going to be an energy company in 30 years. So, and this is not made up. The fact is, oil and gas have spent multiples of dollars higher than anybody else in this country to push clean tech.
Or in the world, for that matter.
But in the Canadian example, it's billions. It's not millions.
It does tie into, I think, what our political leadership is dawning on, and that is that this concept of Canada becoming an energy superpower is very much within our grasp. And it doesn't have to be limited to the traditional oil and gas sector, which has a reputation, deserved or not, that we've had to overcome in the past. But the sorts of things that you guys are doing shows that this is a path forward through that transition to whatever end goal it ultimately is. I agree with you. I mean, we have to agree with you that there's lots still to be done in oil and gas purely, but this sort of collaboration this way, I think, ties in very well to how we want to position ourselves.
So there's a couple of things that have happened that have made this very true.
Right.
The new federal government is definitely talking about energy superpower.
Yeah.
But the reality in the world is very starkly different than it was even a year ago. When you look at what is happening in Iran, people are starting to understand that energy is sovereignty.
Yeah.
Full stop.
Absolutely.
We also have some cross-border tariff issues, and we have a single customer. So this government is recognizing that we have the ability to be an energy superpower where we can create the economic wealth that allows us to actually lead on the clean front side as well.
Right.
Material wealth that builds schools and roads and hospitals. And then it also supports the ecosystem where folks like me, the innovators, can find capital to do what we want to do. So it was just, I guess I've been on the road as a renewable energy developer talking about the and solution for years, but the
Yeah.
traction is different now.
Yes.
And I welcome the story.
Yeah. I couldn't think of a more timely timely time frame for this conference to have
Yeah.
occurred than right now. I think, that it's every 5 years, and it happens to land right at the time when in our country this is becoming a nexus, right? This is becoming a focal point of what we do next. So
So the other thing that happens, and I have a little bit of a background in journalism, so I get this, really good storytelling and narratives tend to hit people in their heart and not their mind.
yeah.
And it's become very personal for folks across the country. I think we've had a groundswell of people wanting to get more energy literate and understanding that this country will do well by supporting the energy industry
Yeah.
to support all the other things that come behind it, because there's no way to argue anything except that if you have energy, you can have everything.
Yeah.
It underpins everything we do. It underpins manufacturing. It underpins but it had to become personal. And
Yes.
so the time is now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more. Well, we appreciate what you're doing, obviously. We thank you for taking the time with us today. I know you're busy. There's still stuff to do at this conference. So thanks for being on the Stream-Flo of Consciousness, Lisa. And,
Can I give you a compliment back?
sure.
Stream-Flo is one of the companies that I idolize. It's family grown, it's been around forever, it's decades old, but it's really, really good at what it does. That's a Canadian thing.
Thank you.
I want to be that. I want to be exactly like that. So thank you for
Well,
having me.
Appreciate the compliments. We try. We'd like to say, well, we have HR backing us up on this. We have 9,870 person years of experience in our building. in
Wow.
Edmonton.
Yeah.
And those are all people who have been doing this for a long time, and I think have still a lot to contribute. We're relishing the opportunity to diversify into geothermal with the wellheads that we have already in place, and the opportunity to continue to grow with you guys. So
I welcome
Thanks.
the opportunity to work together to change things. It'll take a collaboration exactly like the one that you're seeing here
Okay.
to get this done.
great. Thanks again.
Thanks, Marcus.
All right.
Have a good day.
And that's a wrap.